Hey guys, it's Chris. From a Victorian serial killer to a woman who killed and ate a waitress. Here are 10 of the craziest and most dangerous women throughout history. Number 10. 18-year-old murderer. At only 18 years old, a woman in Texas has proved herself to be one of the most dangerous, if not in the world, then at least in her local area. This woman has been charged with murder after apparently luring a man, Adrian Wells, out of his apartment with the promise of intimacy so that 3 men could rob him at gunpoint. But they didn't just take his money, the victim was also shot to death. Dallas police arrested Sydney Whitaker on charges of capital murder, according to the arrest warrant affidavit. Even though she didn't technically murder the victim, she participated in his death by facilitating the home invasion robbery which left the man dead. But what exactly happened with this brutal killing? From what police were able to put together, Whitaker may have been the orchestrator of the whole operation. She had met the victim just days before and was harassing him to let her come over and perform a certain act upon him. The victim's friends told him it was very unusual and he shouldn't even consider it. But it's hard to tell hormones what to do. After the victim went outside to meet Whitaker, the armed men grabbed him, forced him back into his apartment, stole money from everyone inside, and then started blasting for no reason. The victim was killed and one of his friends was wounded, and Whitaker will probably spend the rest of her young years behind bars. Number 9. The Godmother. Maria Licciardi grew up as the daughter of a mafia boss in Italy. She grew to become one of the most powerful female mob bosses in history, ruling the city of Naples from between 1993 until she was arrested in 2001. Home in Italy, she was called La Madrina, meaning the godmother. She rose to power as a young woman, taking over after her brothers and husband were arrested. She became the first female boss of her clan. She kept business running smoothly and participated in a whole heap of lucrative rackets. Everything from smuggling drugs and cigarettes to forced protection and prostitution. Under the godmother's leadership, the mafia in Naples actually became more sophisticated, more organized, and more powerful. One of the most outlandish things she participated in was the purchasing of women from nearby Albania, reportedly for $2,000 each. She then forced these girls into prostitution, shooting them up with drugs to prevent them from escaping. Her downfall came in 1999 after a shipment of heroin arrived from Turkey. Maria said it was too strong and it would kill the average drug user. However, it got packaged and sold anyway, and soon the streets were full of dead drug addicts. There was public outcry and the police cracked down hard. There was a brief clan war afterwards, and Maria mobilized foot soldiers in a deadly gang war that resulted in at least 120 deaths in the region. She made it onto the list of most wanted criminals in Italy and evaded capture for at least 2 years before ultimately being apprehended and arrested. Number 8. Amelia Dyer. Amelia Dyer lived between 1837 and 1896 and is one of the most prolific murderers in the history of England. She operated as a baby farmer and was hung in 1896 for a single murder, though it's agreed that she probably committed many more. Amelia began her career as a baby farmer early on, and if you're wondering what exactly a baby farmer was, it was a person who adopted unwanted children. This was because of the Poor Law Amendment Act in 1834 that allowed men to abandon illegitimate children without having to support them financially. This meant a lot of women were left in dire situations, at which point they would hand their baby to a baby farmer. Baby farmers were supposed to take care of the children, but they were usually mistreated and often even killed just out of convenience. Amelia ran her business by adopting children, getting paid, and then allowing them to die from starvation. As the kids were starving, she would feed them opium syrup to keep them quiet as they slowly faded away. But even opium syrup can get expensive, so she started killing the youngsters quicker. This allowed her to adopt more kids and to make more money. She eluded authorities for quite some time before a doctor grew suspicious of the number of babies dying under her care. She was charged with neglect and given 6 months of hard labor. But she returned to baby farming afterwards, relocated to a new area, and just kept on killing babies. Authorities finally busted her later on and arrived at her estate. They discovered the stench of death. Then they started pulling baby bodies out of the nearby river, and it became clear what she'd done. Even though she was only hung for the murder of 1 child, estimates say she killed anywhere between 200 and 400. Number 7. Cannibal Woman. Natalia Baksheeva, a native of Russia, is a serial killing cannibal. She was recently arrested on suspicion of eating at least 30 people and then coaxing her husband into killing a waitress who just so happened to flirt with him a little too hard. According to state investigators, her husband was suffering from tuberculosis at the time, and his role in the murder and cannibalism would be dealt with later, though he was of course already locked up. As for Natalia, police found a collection of steamed and frozen human remains in her kitchen, and the remains belonged to the final victim, the 35-year-old waitress. Police also found 19 preserved slices of skin and a jar filled with pickled human pieces. She was only arrested for this one murder after she apparently demanded her husband kill the waitress, and he pulled out a knife and stabbed her several times in the chest. The couple then brought her body back to the house, chopped her up, took selfies with her severed body parts, then cooked and ate her a little bit. It was after Natalia was arrested that she admitted to having at least 30 victims over the past 2 decades. She had apparently worked together with her husband to lure women from online dating apps and websites for the sole purpose of murdering and eating them. So do you think cannibals are born or made? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Number 6. The Old Lady Killer. In rural Hidalgo, Mexico back in 1957, Juana Barraza was born. Her father was a police officer and her mother was an alcoholic prostitute. She had a pretty rough childhood. She never learned to read, her relationship with her parents was rocky at best, and her mother even pimped her out at the young age of 12 in exchange for free beer. Suffice it to say, she wasn't born into the best of situations. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Juana toured Mexico as a masked wrestler who went by the name La Dama del Silencio, or Lady of Silence. But it wasn't until 1995 that she began a life of crime. She started with minor stealing, upgraded to burglary, then hatched a plan to steal from the elderly with a friend. Juana and her friend would dress as nurses to gain access to old people's houses and then rob them. The murders began in 2002. Juana began killing old people seemingly for fun. In 2003, so many old people had been killed by strangulation that the police knew they had a serial killer on their hands. And the police eventually caught her only after a witness saw her leaving the home of a murder victim. She was tried with 30 murders, found guilty of 16, and then sentenced to 759 years in prison. Number 5. Rival Killer. In 2007, Harminder Sanghera, also known as Mindy, was a dentistry student who got busted killing a 17-year-old girl named Sana and was sentenced to spend the rest of her life in jail. At the time, Mindy had been in a relationship with Sana's husband. Mindy didn't know that he was married and that the girl was expecting to have a baby. But she eventually found out, and when she did, she took a kitchen knife from her home, drove 115 miles from Birmingham to Greater Manchester, and stabbed the teenage girl in her bedroom 43 times, stabbing through her and into her unborn baby. It was a double homicide. But here's where things get even crazier. Mindy told the court that she hadn't killed anyone. She had only gone to the house to rat out the cheating husband. She said Sana was fine when she left. There was also no forensic evidence that linked her to the crime, but she still got a life sentence for the murder. So either Mindy is a very dangerous woman who belongs behind bars, or the cheating husband became enraged when the two lovers met, stabbing his own wife to death. Then the court was tricked into putting an innocent woman in jail. So who do you think the murderer really was? Number 4. Prom Queen Killer. Darlene Gentry was a prom queen in high school. She attended Texas State Technical College and met a man named Keith, who she would marry in 1999, before moving next door to Keith's very own parents in Robinson, Texas. The couple had 3 boys. Darlene became a nurse, and Keith made a great living as an electrical engineer. It was kind of the perfect marriage. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. But internally, the couple was having serious difficulties. Fought all the time, and Darlene apparently had a very bad spending problem. Then one day, Darlene put a gun against Keith's head and shot him as he slept. From what Darlene told police officers, she had gone out with her friends that night before, and when she returned, Keith was furious about the credit card bill. She then claimed that because of the fight, she went to sleep in their son's room, and when she woke up in the morning, she found the door open and her husband dead. She told the police that a burglar did it. As it turned out, a burglar was not involved at all. Darlene was the one that had shot her husband with a .22 handgun from his own gun safe to try and collect his $750,000 life insurance policy. Number 3. Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias has been described as a carefree, beautiful blonde, aspiring photographer, and even a very, very dangerous woman. She met a man named Travis Alexander and the two fell into a relationship. And even though Travis seemed to be happy, his friends tried to warn him that there was something not quite right about his new girlfriend. They were fearful for his safety as they saw the relationship growing volatile. One friend was quoted saying they feared Travis would be found chopped up in her freezer. Well, Travis Alexander was found dead on June 9, 2008. He was discovered stabbed several times and shot in his head. Everyone was shocked, except for his friends who had anticipated something like this could possibly happen. According to ABC News, Arias told authorities that they were attacked by masked intruders who seemed fixated on killing Travis. And yet these lunatic killers forced her to leave and told her to never tell a soul. Police obviously didn't believe this crazy story, and she has since been sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. We still don't know why she murdered him, what she could have possibly gotten out of it, or really just how crazy this woman truly was. Number 2. The Bermondsey Horror. Marie Manning was a Swiss maid who had a hankering for murder. Both she and her husband were convicted for murdering Marie's lover, Patrick O'Connor, in a disturbing case that became known as the Bermondsey Horror. When the execution came on November 13, 1849, it was the first time a husband and wife had been executed at the same time in England since the year 1700. It was such a rare occasion that even Charles Dickens attended the execution and based some of his future characters on Marie. But just what exactly happened for her and her husband to be hanged? It was August 9, 1849, and Marie's lover was invited to her home to dine with her and her husband, but it was not to be an ordinary dining experience. When Patrick sat down, he was shot in the back of the head at close range, then buried underneath the flagstones in the kitchen. But it was a pretty bad idea to bury the body inside their own house, as police officers noticed something was off a week later during the investigation. But it was on the same day that the police realized Patrick had been murdered that Marie visited the dead man's house to steal his railway shares and all his money. Marie then fled and left her husband behind, hoping to get a clean getaway. She didn't get very far, as she was tracked down in Edinburgh trying to trade off the dead guy's property. Her husband was caught shortly after, and they were both hung together as heartless murderers. Number 1. Ice Cream Killer. Estibaliz Carranza is the ice cream killer, one of the most fascinating female killers in recent history. She was beautiful, young, and very successful. She operated an ice cream parlor in Austria, but even though she was so pleasant and appealing on the outside, she was a cold killer on the inside. In 2008, she killed her ex-husband. Then 2 years later, she shot her boyfriend in the back of the head. Both men were dismembered with a chainsaw. She killed them because apparently the first was violent and lazy, and the second was unfaithful. Rather than simply ending the relationships, it seemed more convenient to simply kill them. After Estibaliz killed both men, she hacked them up in the basement of her ice cream shop and stored their body parts in freezers, then filled the basement with air fresheners. But in 2011, construction workers accidentally stumbled upon the corpses in her basement. Estibaliz fled in a cab before the police could arrive to apprehend her, and wound up 300 miles away in Italy. She was eventually discovered hiding with a street musician and was taken back to Austria, where she was deemed dangerous and mentally abnormal. Even a psychiatrist said she had a personality disorder and would probably kill again if left free. Thanks for watching. Who's the most dangerous woman you can think of? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit subscribe for lots more. We'll see you next time.